This lady's children were not very successful in life and lived in the shadow of what the family had built. When they learned that their mother had passed away, they rushed to her house in search of the inheritance. But what they found in the woman's room would turn their lives upside down. Helena Romano, a 69-year-old Italian lady, used to sit on the balcony of her beautiful and majestic mansion, looking at the horizon and getting lost in memories. She grew up surrounded by luxury, but was never the type to be carried away by ostentation. Her father, an automobile tycoon, always taught her that true wealth was not in bank accounts, but in a person's character and integrity. Helena learned from an early age to value every penny, every effort that took her family to the top. She knew that behind every success there were sacrifices, sleepless nights, and difficult decisions. At the age of 25, her destiny became intertwined with that of Umberto, a charming young man, son of one of her father's closest associates. Their wedding was the event of the year, a union that not only sealed their fates but also strengthened their family's empire. Together, they were the embodiment of power and elegance, but most of all, they shared a deep love and vision for the future. The anti-serious house was soon filled with the sound of small feet running through the hallways. First came Pietro, a boy with curious eyes and an infectious smile. Just a year later, Lorenzo arrived, bringing with him an inexhaustible energy and a laugh that could brighten even the darkest day. The Romano's mansion, located in the heart of Tuscany, was a symbol of prosperity and success, but behind its stone walls and impeccable gardens, Helena felt an emptiness that luxury could not fill. Every corner of that house reminded her of her privileged childhood, and although she was grateful for everything, something inside her cried out for a greater purpose. On a cold winter night, while watching the fireplace crackle, Helena expressed to Umberto her desire to make a difference in the world, mentioning the wealth they had and the need of many out there. Umberto, always understanding and equally generous, agreed with her. Together they decided it was time to reach out to those less fortunate. The choice for the orphanage was not random. Helena always had a special affection for children and knew that many of them were not as lucky as her own children. The couple then decided to donate the sum of 100,000 euros to a local orphanage, hoping that this gesture could bring a little joy and hope to the lives of those children. On the day of the visit, the sun shone brightly, contrasting with the faded gray of the orphanage building. The children, upon seeing the couple approaching, ran towards them with curious eyes and shy smiles. But among all those innocent faces, one pair of eyes stood out. They were deep and bright eyes, which seemed to carry stories and dreams. The 5-year-old boy introduced himself as Antonio. Helena was immediately attracted to him. There was something in that look, a mixture of sadness and hope, that touched her deeply. While they were talking, Helena learned her story. Antonio had been abandoned in front of a hospital, and the orphanage had always been her only home. In the days that followed, Helena couldn't get Antonio out of her thoughts. She felt there was a special connection between them, something that went beyond compassion. Talking to Umberto, she expressed her desire to adopt the boy. Umberto, seeing the determination and love in his wife's eyes, agreed. The adoption process, thanks to the couple's influence and resources, was surprisingly quick. Within a few weeks, Antonio was leaving the orphanage with a small suitcase and a heart full of hope. He was not only getting a new family, but also a new chance at life. And so, the Romano family gained a new member, a kind boy with bright eyes, who brought with him not only his story, but also the promise of a future full of love and possibilities. The years quickly passed, and Helena was moved to reflect on how her boys had grown up. There they were, each in their own world, but united by unbreakable bonds. Antonio, the youngest, now 16 years old, had an insatiable curiosity. His eyes, which had once shone in the orphanage, now shone even more brightly. He spent hours in the house's vast library, reading about biology, science, and distant cultures. It was common to see him with a stethoscope, listening to the heartbeats of the animals on the property or helping employees with minor injuries. His dream was clear. I wanted to be a doctor and make a difference in the world. Lorenzo, the middle brother, was the opposite. His world was made of arguments and debates. From an early age, he showed an interest in law, perhaps influenced by the family business. He often held courts in the garden, where he judged disputes between servants or even between his brothers. However, his passion for the law was often overshadowed by his distractions and indecision. Pietro, the eldest, had the weight of tradition on his shoulders. He knew he would eventually have to take over the family business. Therefore, as soon as he finished high school, he began studying management and economics. But he also had a rebellious side that made his parents worry. It was common to see him driving sports cars along the roads of Tuscany or donning at extravagant balls in the region. He loved life and lived each moment intensely. The three brothers, despite their differences, shared unforgettable moments. The long summer afternoons at the pool, the trips to the coast, the family parties, they were inseparable. Helena and Umberto watched with pride, hoping that, despite their different paths, the three would always remember the value of family. However, over the years, the differences between them began to become more pronounced. Antonio, always humble and dedicated, graduated in medicine and began volunteering at local hospitals, gaining experience and knowledge. Lorenzo, on the other hand, faced difficulties in law school, often feeling out of place and without direction. And Pietro, although brilliant in his studies, began to lose himself in the temptations of rich youth. Helena, watching from afar, tried to keep the family together. She organized weekly dinners, hoping that, around the table, the brothers would reconnect. And it often worked. The laughter, stories, and moments shared rekindled the flame of fraternity. But, like every family, there were challenges and conflicts, but that was just the beginning. After a few years, Antonio, as he had always had a beating heart for greater causes, was guided to distant lands, where medicine was still a luxury and pain was a constant. In remote villages in Africa, in the mountains of Asia, and in communities in Latin America, he became a ray of hope, healing thousands of people with his skilled hands. Every call he made home told of his adventures and challenges, filling his parents' ears with excitement. They always looked forward to their video calls, where they could see Antonio's face, hear his voice and feel, even if for brief moments, that they were together again. While Antonio spread healing and love around the world, Pietro and Lorenzo, the couple's biological children, were lost in their own selfish worlds. Sporadic calls became rare and messages even scarcer. Helena, with her maternal heart, felt a growing emptiness, a longing that hurt in her chest. Umberto, in turn, tried to hide his disappointment, but the sadness in her eyes was evident. The winter of that year was particularly harsh in Italy. Snow covered the streets and the biting wind made the trees bend. It was in this freezing scenario that Umberto, already weakened by age, fell ill. The house, once full of laughter and memories, became silent, interrupted only by Helena's whispers and the doctor's hurried footsteps. The news of Umberto's illness spread quickly, but not enough to bring Pietro and Lorenzo back. They, wrapped up in their lives, seemed too far away, both in kilometers and in feelings. Helena, at her dear husband's bedside, held her hand, hoping for a miracle, a turnaround, a sign that everything would be okay. But fate, in its unpredictability, took Umberto away on a silent night. Helena, heartbroken, prepared herself for her last goodbye. On the day of the wake, the house was full of familiar faces, friends, relatives, and associates. But among everyone present, two were missing: Pietro and Lorenzo. Antonio, despite his medical missions, managed to arrive on time, his face marked by incessant work and fatigue, showing deep pain. He hugged Helena, trying to convey some comfort, some strength. Together, mother and son faced the farewell, feeling the painful absence of the other two who didn't even show up to say goodbye to their own father. Helena, now alone, felt like a tree in winter, stripped of its leaves, exposed to the cold and wind. But in the midst of her pain, she had Antonio, the son who, despite not having her blood, had her whole heart. And together, they would try to rebuild their lives, piece by piece, memory by memory. Antonio, with his heart always focused on his family, remained by Helena's side for a while, trying to console her and bring some comfort. However, Helena, with her wisdom and understanding, knew that the world needed Antonio. He had a bigger mission, one that went beyond the walls of that house in Italy. "My dear, I know how much you want to stay here with me, and I would love for you to stay too. But there are people out there who need you much more than I do. I have our neighbors, who are always around and keep me company. You need to continue your journey," Helena said, holding Antonio's hands. Antonio, with teary eyes, nodded. He knew his mother was right. The next day, despite the pain of separation, he left, carrying with him the silent promise that he would return whenever he could. Meanwhile, Pietro and Lorenzo remained distant, wrapped up in their own lives and concerns. Calls to his mother were rare and visits were practically non-existent. Time, cruel in its passage, began to weigh on Helena. The strength of the past gave way to a fragility that she could no longer ignore. Feeling the need to reunite her children, she attempted to contact them, expressing her concern about the family business and her declining health. "My children, I feel that time is running out for me. We need to get together and discuss the future of the family business. Please come." Helena spoke in connection with Pietro and Lorenzo. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Helena's hope of seeing her children again began to fade. Antonio, in one of her calls, expressed his inability to manage the family business due to his medical commitments. He trusted that Pietro and Lorenzo would take on this responsibility. However, their silence was deafening. The grand Italian house, which once resonated with the joy of the united family, now echoed with the silence of absence. Helena, sitting in her favorite chair, looked at photos of her 3 children, wondering where things had gone wrong. She longed to hear their laughter, feel their hugs, and simply be in their presence again. But for now, all she had was silence and memories of happier times. Helena, with her wisdom accumulated over the years, realized that the only way to bring her children together again would be through a lesson they would never forget. She wanted them to understand the true value of life, the meaning of family, and the ephemerality of time. With this thought in mind, Helena began to devise a meticulous plan. She called her trusted lawyer and updated her will. Then he asked him, when the time came, to deliver a specific letter to his children. The letter, written in her elegant, shaky handwriting, contained words that she hoped would touch Pietro, Lorenzo, and Antonio deeply. However, not everything went as expected. A week after meeting with her lawyer, Helena passed away peacefully in her sleep. The news of her death spread quickly, and her children were notified of the sad event. Antonio, heartbroken, was the first to arrive at the family home. Pietro and Lorenzo, despite their distant lives, also hurried to return, driven by guilt and the shock of the sudden loss. However, the two truly seemed more concerned about dividing the inheritance than about their own mother. At the funeral, after the tributes and farewells, Helena's lawyer approached the 3 brothers and handed them the letter she had left. With shaking hands, Antonio opened the envelope and began to read aloud. "My beloved children, if you are reading this letter, it means that I have left this world. I want you to know that despite the distance and the choices you made, my love for you has never diminished. Life is short and fragile, and we often get lost in search of things that in the end have no real meaning. I am writing this letter with tears in my eyes and a longing that squeezes my chest. I remember the sunny days when we ran around the garden, the laughter that echoed through the house, and the nights when together we told stories about the starry sky. We were a united family, full of love and joy. I understand, my children, life is there to be lived, but there is nothing in this world more valuable than one's own family. Family is the foundation of our existence. It is where we learn values, where we are supported in difficult times, and where we celebrate joy. Antonio, my dear, I thank God every day for having you as a son. Choosing you from that orphanage was the best thing I ever did. Your kindness, your affection, and your dedication to others are inspiring. Keep making a difference in this world, touching hearts and saving lives. You are living proof that love can transform and heal. My firstborn Pietro, I trust in your ability and strength. With time, I hope your mind will be enlightened and maturity will come to you. The responsibility for the family business falls on your shoulders. And I know that, with dedication and commitment, you will be able to honor our legacy. Lorenzo, my dreamy boy, never give up on your dreams. I know the path may seem arduous and full of obstacles, but remember that to reach the top of a mountain, you need to take one step at a time. Have faith, persist, and know that I will always be by your side, rooting for you. Every day in my prayers, I asked God to illuminate their paths, to guide their minds, and protect them from all evil. I also asked, with a heart wounded with longing, that before I left, I could see their faces, hear their voices, and feel their hugs. Was all I wanted. But the days became long and harrowing, and loneliness became my only company. I want you to know that I love you more than words can express. I have dedicated my life to caring, protecting, and loving each of you, and for all three I would give my life. Unfortunately, if you are reading this now, it is because my departure was lonely and my heart broke, not because of the inevitability of death, but because of the longing and sadness of not having you by my side. But I want you to know that despite the pain and longing, my love for you has never diminished. And I hope that, with this letter, you can understand the depth of that love and the value of family. I ask that you come together, support each other, and never forget the love we share. Life is brief and time is precious. Cherish every moment and know that wherever I am, I will always be with you. With all the love from your mother, Helena. Tears streamed down the three brothers' faces as the reality of their mother's message set in. The atmosphere was charged with emotion after reading the letter. Pietro, visibly shaken, with tears flowing incessantly, apologized to his mother and expressed his deep regret. He spoke about the weight of guilt he felt for having been separated from his mother, and that, if he could go back in time, he would have done everything differently, valuing every moment with her, because she didn't deserve to have left alone. Lorenzo, equally emotional, also shared his feelings of remorse. He mentioned the countless times he prioritized other things over time with his mother. He talked about the regret he felt for not being there for the most important moments and how he wished he had another chance to make amends for his mistakes. Feelings of regret and the silent promise of change permeated the atmosphere, and it was clear that Helena's words had deeply touched her children's hearts. The silence in the room was almost palpable, interrupted only by the muffled sobs of the children. Pietro and Lorenzo, with red and swollen eyes, deeply regretted not having enjoyed the moments with Helena while she was alive. Antonio, although more present, felt the pain of loss and the sadness of seeing his brothers so remorseful. While the trio was immersed in their grief, a soft, barely audible sound caught their attention. It was like the whisper of a gentle wind, but there was something different. And then, to everyone's amazement, Helena began to move. Her eyes, previously closed and serene, now slowly opened, revealing the same brightness as always. Pietro backed away, stumbling over a chair, while Lorenzo, eyes wide, tried to find words. Antonio, always the calmest one, looked at Helena, trying to understand what was happening. Helena, sitting on the bed and looking deeply into her children's eyes, said in a soft voice, "My dear ones, I forgive you." The shock was evident on the children's faces. They couldn't understand what was happening. Was it a dream? A hallucination? Seeing the panic in their eyes, Helena quickly reassured them. "Keep calm. I know this is unexpected and I apologize for the shock, but this was the only way I could really see you, to feel you close to me again. I didn't want to leave this world without seeing my children reunited, without feeling your love once again. So I came up with the idea of faking my death, hoping that it would bring them together. Pietro, still in shock, said, "Mom, this is insane." Helena smiled softly. "Maybe it is, my dear, but look around her. We are all here, together as a family again. And now we have the chance to do things differently, to be more present in each other's lives." Lorenzo, wiping away his tears, approached his mother and hugged her. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he whispered in her ear. Antonio, with a smile on his face, joined the hug, followed by Pietro. The four hugged each other tightly, feeling the love and connection that had always existed between them, but had been forgotten over the years. And at that moment, amid tears and laughter, the family was reunited, promising never to be lost again. Appreciate it while it lasts. Not everything in life has a second chance. Thanks for watching. Comment below what you thought of this story and which city you are watching us from. Leave your like and subscribe to our Storyflix Brazil channel so that together we can build a huge community that shares inspiring stories. Until later.